Lots of
Dude,
stuff,
chatting.
lots of hobby stuff to chat about. I know Greg has a lot to talk about.
Yeah, all the things that I did.
Well, I think we should start out by saying our introductory section, hobby happenings. I can say, I think for all of us, there weren't a lot of happenings in the hobby.
Holiday happenings.
Yeah, I think that's a more accurate one. Because as I've been sort of talking about for the past few weeks, most of my attention has been focused on drawing holiday greeting cards. So you can see on the screen here, this is one of the ones I drew. This is of a Fisher's lovebird. Lovebirds exist. This is one of them.
Cute.
If any of you if any of you viewers have seen The Birds, that old classic film, it starts
I have
out
not.
with someone walking into a shop that sells birds asking for lovebirds. They don't have the
Oh.
lovebirds. But
Mm.
the one main character does go and order some lovebirds, but I don't think they're Fisher's lovebirds. I think there's also more of a standard variety that more of like a grayish blue color.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
But yeah, so I've been working on that, and I guess which is maybe a little more hobby related. As I talked about last week, I think last week I was saying that hopefully by this time I would have finished drawing and coloring the holiday card for the blog. Well, I can't say I finished it, but I have made some progress on it. So here's the start of the card. Just like last year, we have the little half mechanical frog bishop. He's back with his servo skull friend, and this time he's flying around on one of those new Vansar hoverboards that we reviled and made fun of so much. He's flying around on one of those, um, delivering maybe toys and joy and such for the holidays. So,
That's great. Hey, Lifeboat's here. Hi, Lifeboat. Hey. Well, you're doing all right. I mean, had some trouble, I know, with California and wildfires, and well, the pandemic hasn't good for it.
it's true. Been rough. Certainly
Yeah,
been rough in California.
it's true.
But yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm working on that. I feel in a few days it'll be finished, and then I'll have to do a little doctoring of it in Illustrator and Photoshop, and then it'll be ready to post up on probably on Instagram and the blog.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's good.
yeah, so I'm pretty excited about it. Eric, how you haven't really done a whole lot, right? Maybe a little more with the
Yeah.
halflings.
Yeah, not a whole lot, but just busy with work-related things. So yeah, not much is happening. Hey, Dave, nice to have you here.
Oh, hey,
Uh,
Dad.
I mean, I guess it worked and got up that the one post a few days ago about the little robin you painted. So that happened in the blog. I
Yeah,
don't
that's
know.
true. I think. Let's see.
Like, I really want to get back to painting some more of the hobbits, but I just, haven't really gotten around to it. Like, I've slowly been reading through the rules for Blitzball, but for Blood Bowl, I'm sorry. Gosh, I got it wrong already.
It's easy to get that wrong. I've been reading through the rules as well, and I will say there are a lot of rules for Blood Bowl. So,
Yeah. I mean, a bunch of it you probably don't need to you don't need to read all the special rules and all the sort of stuff. And I think all of that probably becomes a little bit more second nature as you play it. And I suspect the game comes with some like player aids that have a lot of the tables and sort of the order of stuff that probably would help a lot for a new player. Or in our case, we've played a few times, but it has been so periodic over the years that I
I
don't
mean, for
really
me, it's probably been 10 years. It was before the last edition, which was in 2016, that I played.
before this blog was
Yeah, that's true, actually.
probably like 12 years.
Well, I think sort of related to that, I think today on the Warhammer community page, or maybe yesterday, they
There's an
had the
FAQ,
first
right?
FAQ for Blood Bowl, and I don't think they actually really made any real changes. I think they just sort of clarified some of the wording on
Well,
a
one of
few
them they
things.
had when you take an injury and your armor value gets
Mm-hmm.
reduced or
Broken.
like your worse, they wrote it wrong such that you actually get stronger if you get that injury.
Hmm,
So
that's
that's
interesting.
legitimate. That was like a typo and like literally it's written wrong.
Oh, hmm.
Whereas I think a lot of the other stuff is kind of clarifications.
Yeah.
The the armor thing is just wrong. But it was probably to the point that a lot of people reading it, like myself included, I just kind of read through it and like, okay, I understand what this is without actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to just make assumptions for rules when you're reading them, particularly if there's something that we're at least vaguely familiar with.
Hmm.
But I guess one thing with the armor, like, you, when you take an injury, say I cause an injury on one of your halflings, Eric, who rolls the arm that someone rolls to see if the
Yeah,
armor breaks, is that correct?
I think it's the opponent, the person who caused the injury.
Yeah, so if I'm pounding one of your halflings, I would roll to see if I break the armor, and you essentially have to meet or exceed the armor value.
It used to be, and one of the major things the new rules did was kind of clarify stuff. I think before you just had an armor value, like if it was 7
Hmm.
to cause a wound, you'd have to roll higher than an 8. But now they've just changed it. Whatever your armor is, it says like 8 plus or 7 plus. So it's just very consistent. It tells you exactly what you need to roll.
So
A
if you
7.
roll like 8 plus, any of that will break the armor.
Yeah, well, and it was the same
Okay.
thing before, like, if you wanted to know if you, like, picked up a ball or something, you would take your agility value and subtract it from 7.
Hmm.
Now it's just like they just say, "Oh, you just have your agility value, and it's just what it is." And the same thing, because I think before there for a lot of stuff, like picking up the ball, you would if provided it weren't marked or whatever, you'd get, like, +1 to your roll, so most of the times you were doing it, you'd get +1 to the roll, but now that has just been incorporated into it, so a lot of the things, I think it's just, like, the rules haven't really changed, it's just how it's displayed on the sheets or your character profiles and such are just more explicit and clear. It's not like, "Oh, what do you have to do? Subtract this from this, then add these 2 modifiers, and that's what you get," which I think better design,
Yeah.
sort of streamlining it without really changing anything.
Yeah. Well, so since I mean, I guess in terms of things to talk about tonight, I thought maybe we could unbox Blood Bowl. We finally got our copy in, it
Mhm.
essentially arrived a week after it was released. So, eh, fine, I guess.
Yeah, I
um,
mean, that's
we
not
can.
impressive, but
It's okay. And then I guess in terms of releases and stuff
for
like
the most
that,
there, I guess we could at least briefly talk about so over the weekend, there was a
Black
preview, but
Library
it was the
preview.
Black Library one, and I feel that was, like, the most exciting of GW's previews all of 2020, just
What?
because they talked about
Because of that
interesting
John French
things.
interview?
What was that?
Because of the John French interview?
I didn't listen to that, but, I mean, I imagine it would be somewhat interesting, like, they announced the next book in the Black Lot or the Siege of Terra series, which I think is John French wrote. So, I mean, I'm only on the 2nd book of the Siege of Terra, so I'm not really there yet, but I could see how people would be excited for this, such that it'll be released soon. But there were a bunch of other books and stuff released. Another, book, what's a Uriel Ventris novel is being released, written by Graham McNeil. I think people like those novels.
I read one of those books, the first one, Nightbringer, I think it was called, about
Yeah,
Necrons and such. Actually,
that's
Garden
exciting.
Squid is asking us what we think of the new Van Sar surfboards. I think it goes without saying that we don't like them.
Yeah. No, we're
Oh,
not a big fan. Well, you should show that, the card you're working on. That's
okay, yeah. So I'm starting to draw a holiday card or a holiday greeting card for the blog, and our little half robot, half frog bishop. He is currently going to be riding one of those stupid surfboards. So I I've started sketching that out, and let me tell you, those surfboards are a nightmare to draw. They are so complicated. Let's see, like
yeah.
somewhere they showed some new pictures. Actually, do they have some new
Okay.
Slaanesh stuff that they showed
They
too,
don't
actually.
really have pictures of that.
Oh,
They have, like, the little face shots, which look like they could be kinda
Yeah,
cool.
they look good.
They
These
look
shots
better
look
than the
good.
other stuff,
yeah, they do.
and but they don't have real pictures.
But yeah, so we obviously didn't like the
Keep it up
stupid
a little bit, I think.
surfboard.
The Van Sar thing, keep going up.
Oh, here it is. I think here we at least see something. Oh, here is
Yeah.
an illustration of one, and I salute whoever was the artist who drew this. I salute them for like, oh my god, it's just such a clusterfuck of detail.
Yeah, and how, like, the different little arms come out and everything about it, it's but, like, what you're drawing so far looks great. It was commend you, Greg, for having the idea, like, it's up
So I the one that had the idea?
Well, Greg, you
maybe
had an
Greg.
idea of having Bishop riding like a little sled or something, and um, that's what I was
Then
going to
Maybe
do
so.
initially, and then a few weeks after we came up with that idea, they showed pictures of the Van Sar speeder boards, and it seemed like that was an obvious shoe in.
Yeah, Lifeboat, it does look kind of like the Green Goblin surfboard,
But I feel the biggest thing about them is they really don't fit with the
the aesthetic.
narrative and aesthetic for Necromunda and down in the slums and the shittiest
Yeah.
areas of the hive. Like this looks more high tech than what the mighty space marines are using. So like it doesn't fit.
That's what the Van Sar are, Adam, the most high-tech stuff.
Yeah, I guess. I guess.
Yeah, so not too cool looking, but oh, yeah, well, I guess I was just saying, but Yeah, so another Uriel Ventress novel, and they made looks kind of bad.
Oh yeah, there's been a lot of talk about the special model that they're releasing of Uriel Ventress, and like I feel so this was going to be a model that I would have thought people wouldn't complain so much about because so far every time they've had a Black Library model, people are always complaining about how like oh it's a character that no one
You
really
know,
knows, or it's a character for a new book that no one cares about. Now they chose a character that every or most people know about. Mind you, he is an ultramarine and it is a space marine, but most of their books are about space marines, and no one was happy with him. And I, in their defense, the face looks pretty derpy, and I think that's what most
yeah,
people were laughing about.
Because the rest of him looks fine. I mean, his
fine.
weapons aren't great, but like at least he doesn't have his foot up on a rock.
No, yeah,
His
I was actually pretty pleased with the model.
It's not squatting.
His
Like
head looks dumb, but
I feel other than the head, like it's passable, and you could
like the armor
easily
looks
skip
good. He's just
forward.
standing, which is like incredible. He's not squatting. Like I don't even think the face is terrible, but I guess people were comparing the face, the different cover renditions and stuff, and they didn't like that. One thing that I should say, he doesn't have his finger on the trigger like Hallelujah.
Yeah, it's
They've
surprising.
done it again. So every so often they do that with their
Mhm.
models, and this was a perfect example where he shouldn't have his finger on the trigger, and he doesn't. So
Yeah, so that's nice.
I'm
But
pleased. Like I
I don't
feel
like how his bolter has the wings on it, and that to me is like a classic example of like we want to add more detail to make his bolter special or make it master crafted, and they like just add gaudy detail like that.
it's
Or
stupid.
even his sword, it's just like God, that's a dumb design. Like, just let's take the asset of this power blade or whatever we've used multiple times and just give it a stupid looking cross guard.
but they're just following whatever that cover looked like. So like
Yeah,
that wasn't necessarily the
yeah.
sculptor's dumb idea.
Mhm.
Also, one thing that I wonder, do we think this is a plastic model?
I think so.
I
I mean,
hope
because I
so.
feel that obviously they didn't do it for Eisenhorn, but I feel they're more recent stuff that I think they've started to transition
They
to.
didn't with the female commissar.
I guess you're
Well,
right.
my guess is made her like 7 years, and
Yeah,
then just never found a replacer.
I
it
will
could be.
not be
It's
surprised
also
if
a space marine.
I will not be surprised if this is
Yeah, you're
line
right.
cast.
Yeah, I wouldn't
I
either.
don't think it says. Or at least
But
not from what I can tell.
the real reason to be excited is because Dan Abnett has finally finished writing the second book in his Beckwin series. So, like, kind of the third uh, Inquisitor Eisenhorn Ravener saga. Um, in the first one, Pariah was how it was released like 9 or 10 years ago now, and it's just been so long. And it was a like, I thought Pariah was great and lots of interesting ideas, some elements that really, I think, called back to Planescape Torment, that old CRPG. Some elements of it, I feel, really seemed like they were hearkening to that, and there were a bunch of neat reveals and just the character. It's neat because it's another first person perspective like the Eisenhorn novels, unlike the Ravener ones, and the character, it's from her perspective, and she isn't aware of who like Eisenhorn is, Ravener, and all these characters. So the reader has all this additional knowledge that she does not, and it
Hmm.
makes it interesting. But and I guess they're releasing Pariah in paperback, or maybe this is hardcover again, because I don't think
Looks
they're
like a
in.
hardcover book.
You can't. It hasn't been in print for a while. There's been a digital version though, but I think the cover looks great, and the fact that he actually wrote it again is great. Which I mean, yeah, it's just been so long. I guess it was because Dan had been really wasn't able to write much for the Black Library for a while. I think due to all his comic stuff and
He's
working
doing
with
all sorts of
Marvel and
stuff. Really
things like
prolific.
that. But I feel in like the last 2 years or so, he's been able to start working on GW stuff, like Black Library stuff again, and he finished writing one of the Gaunt's Ghost novels, Anarch, I think it was called, and he wrote one of the Siege of Terra novels. And a little while back, he mentioned in an interview that he was working on Penitent, and it's just awesome to see it. He actually finished it. He's working on other stuff because there was a lull of a bunch of years that he was just like not writing anything. Like he wrote Shall Know No Fear and maybe Unremembered Empire, and then just there was nothing
Yeah,
for a while. But yeah, honestly, I feel I've been waiting for this novel for a long time.
everyone has.
Yeah, Lifeboat mentions that he writes so much for DC and Marvel. Yeah, yeah, he's just prolific with all sorts of stuff. But yeah, I'm excited that I think he has a little bit more freedom and is able to write some 40K stuff again because I feel he had a large like he made the Alpha Legion cool. He made helped establish the neater aspects of the Inquisition. Obviously, some of those were like solidified with the release of the Inquisitor role playing game in like 2000, but I think his novels that were released around the same time really established that for more people and got people interested in looking at other aspects of 40K other than Space Marines and that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, Pariah has a lot of cool scenes where like Eisenhorn first shows up and wow, it's really great. I'd strongly recommend people read them.
I think I even sort of remember what happens in it. Sort of.
Yeah, I love it too. I went and I think when Mad Dose was released, which yeah,
Oh, I didn't
Dan
read that.
the fourth Eisenhorn novel that he didn't really intend to write, but I think working on all these other things, it just kind of came to him and allowed him to connect some of his other short stories together a little bit and sort of establish what was happening a little bit with Eisenhorn and
I
Ravener. And
should,
that's
I need to
yeah,
anyway.
yeah, you should. They're great, and Magos is really neat because it's primarily from the perspective of a Magos biologist or whatever they're called that was stuck on this backwater planet and was, I don't know, commissioned by one of the planetary governor or whatever to create a taxonomy like for all the species and plants and animals and stuff on the planet. And he gets kind of call caught up with Eisenhorn. And the perspective from sort of an academic is
Hmm.
interesting, very different from and there was an older short story that dealt with this Magos helping, an what the police force, what the RBDs, and I don't know, it's great. It's worth reading. So yeah, I was excited about this, and to be honest, I almost feel like the when I saw they were doing one of these previews, it's like I bet they're gonna reveal that was written, and they did. They also revealed they're writing another uh Xenos book, like Libera Xenos, or what was it called? They released one a while back.
Liber
Like,
right? Xenologist.
yeah, so they
Observations
were.
from a Blackstone fortress. So this could be cool.
I don't like that it's written from.
Darius
Oh,
Hinks.
I thought. Never mind. That's fine. I thought it might have been written from. Or
Janice, whatever.
yeah,
Or
Janice Drake's perspective. Or maybe Hinks is the author. But does it say? Because if it's from Janice Drake's perspective, it's just like I
oh
don't. I'm
god,
sure.
it is. It's written from
I
the
think.
perspective of the intrepid rogue trader, Janice.
I mean, I guess it makes sense that probably not that many people went into that particular Blackstone fortress. But to me, it just screams like small universe, small world
So
that
it'll be
I would.
interesting. Do you think this book will have stuff about aliens and other constructs that we haven't seen in model form? Or do you think
No.
I really doubt it,
If they
that
don't, then the book is kind of useless.
but if it could be the type of thing where it collects together like all their ideas and thoughts for things that they wanted to do in it, but then didn't because it wasn't successful enough or something.
Well, like, because Dan Abnett has a book that he actually expanded and they re-released it talking about like sort of a historical documentation of the Sabbath World Crusades.
Yeah.
And like he could have so easily done something like kind of like this. It's like written from the perspective of Ibram Gaunt or
Yeah.
something. And it's just like
Not a good
it
idea.
it's so small and limiting, like this huge like sector spanning conflict that transpired over I don't know like 100 years or something, and it's all told from this one character that you've read books from. I don't know,
I don't know.
but I mean, I
I'm still
guess
sort
the
of
Blackstone
interested to see
is
it.
still.
I'm still sort of interested to see it, but it has the possibility of being a
Yeah,
huge disappointment.
yeah, but yeah, I hopefully it'll be good.
You know what
Hopefully.
else hopefully will be good? The
Hmm.
new Cyberpunk video game that comes out like tomorrow or something, but it
It
won't be.
a bunch of reviews have already gone up. It must be kind of a buggy mess.
That sounds about right.
But I think Witcher 3 and such what they created was kinda like that too.
But is it
But
more of a
it's not.
buggy mess than a Bethesda game?
I
I
I
don't
doubt
know.
it.
couldn't
Yeah, I
trust
don't
you.
know.
I doubt it. It
Yeah, I
almost
feel
couldn't be.
yeah, Cyberpunk will be probably better to play in a few months. But from the sounds of it, I think the actual storyline is somewhat short.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
But there's like there's I mean, I guess it was unlike the Witcher 3, like the storyline thing was very long, but and I think it almost even got some criticism, like being too long. So I think they tried to cut back the major storyline a lot, but there are tons of like substantial side quests and things of that nature and things to do that you don't necessarily have to do. But I think if you would skip it, it like that's a large portion of the game.
The fetch quests?
Whether or not they're fetch quests, I think not all of them are fetch quests. I think some are, but a bunch are more character driven stuff. And supposedly the dialogue and that whatnot is pretty good, and that it's interesting that I heard some person describe it, that they were surprised about how most of the characters that are talking with you just don't have patience with you, like that you're not the center of those characters' world
Oh,
almost.
that's good.
And they're like a lot of stuff's timed, and like it's clear that maybe someone's talking to you, but their full attention isn't on you.
That makes sense.
And so to me it sounds as though a lot of effort was placed in it to make it maybe more like like a real true role playing game where you're, actually role playing a character rather than just a bunch of stats and grinding weapons and that sort of thing. But I don't know. I'm excited to see it eventually. I don't know for how much I think it's supposed to be creating an atmosphere in a world. I could see if you jump in and play it right away and it's like really buggy, I could see that maybe taking you out of the experience.
Yeah.
Library mentions here that pretty much everything released recently has been a buggy mess. Yeah, I would maybe push back a little bit on the Assassin's Creed thing. I've been playing that because I was given a free copy with the processor I got for a computer,
Look at you,
and
Eric, playing games.
Yeah,
there's like
goddamn.
been almost no bugs.
That's just your
Like there's
computer, Eric. That's an N of 1.
maybe, well, like there's maybe some slight graphical glitches and stuff, but most of that's more just like the Assassin's Creed. Like, it's just what you expect from Assassin's Creed, but there haven't been, like, lots of things like, "Oh, you've fallen through the map," or,
Just wait for it,
like
Eric. It's coming.
but
It
my
wouldn't be a
wife and I
computer game if you
are, like,
couldn't fall
80
through a
hours in,
map.
so we've played a lot of it.
He's
I
Lifeboat's
I
asking if all the enemies dance bug. That sounds pretty great.
I did not I did not see that, so maybe we've just gotten kinda lucky with what has happened.
Yeah, I don't think you've been looking hard enough, Eric.
Maybe not.
Okay, well, we've belabored all of this for a long time. So why don't we shift gears and maybe look at Blood Bowl? I said it
Well,
right.
yeah, actually, that's an interesting point that maybe it's more because. Like, a week after Assassin's Creed was released, there was a major patch for, like, the PlayStation 5 and Xbox One that essentially just added all the graphical modifications and stats that was in the PC version, where you can,
Well,
like, adjust various components to, like, make, like, higher frame rate or better resolution and all that stuff. So which I was actually pretty impressed with the PC version of it. There are just so many options that you can control to try to optimize it and make it play better, which I think in general consoles don't really do that because they have fixed hardware, fixed RAM, processor, all that sort of stuff. So the companies making them can just optimize it for that. Whereas with a PC, since there's so many components that'll be different from person to person, it's good to have all those options. So maybe the fact that they actually had them from the get go reduced some of that. But yeah, I think Cyberpunk will have a lot of that too. But yeah, well, Blood Bowl, there it
yeah, so
is.
here it is. Greg ordered it directly from Games Workshop the first day it went up for pre-order. It came at we received it roughly a week after it was released. Arrived in good shape, so I can't really complain that much. Um, it's not like I was gunning to get this and assemble it and play it or anything, so it is what it is. The box is pretty nice. It's heavy, similar to most Games Workshop releases. these days. The box quality is really high. The cardboard is like kind of a nice matte glossy, or like a nice glossy finish. Um the
It's
card
great that they finally care about sort of that presentation sort of stuff. It's like almost like feel like you have to thank Apple for making companies care about that.
Yeah, because like have a lot of memories of like Gorka Morka and some of those older games. The the quality of the cardboard on the box was never very high, and if you put any weight on it, you kind of destroyed it. But so this is really nice. The box is relatively small for
That's cool,
all
like
that it
not making
comes in it.
gigantic. Well, one of the things that their older boxes, even box quality wasn't as big a thing. It's like I'd almost feel like you'd spend all this money, get some new box game or whatever, and you'd buy it and you'd open it up, and there would just be a sea of gray sprues that are all bending and bitching up all the printed material, and you just open it up and it's like immediate buyer's remorse. Like, did I actually get a good quality product? Probably not. It's Games Workshop's rule writing.
Yeah, it's
Um,
like I spent $140 on this, and all the sprues, all the plastic sprues, are digging holes and stuff in like the rule book and
the
all the other
car.
stuff like that.
But
But
yeah,
yeah, the
it's nice
box is nice.
they realized that, like, it is kind of a premium product. Like, you're spending a lot of money, and to be able to open it and feel like there are quality components throughout, I think means a lot.
Yeah, so the box is nice. I will say the presentation on this one isn't quite as good as some of their other ones. They just have a mess of sprues on the top that are
The different colors make it more
no.
visual, though.
Yeah, so the different colors are pretty nice because it if you were approaching this as more of a board game, putting together all of the components for the different teams, having just the different colors, kind of goes a long way with making it feel like standard board games where you have
Mhm.
different color components. So, I don't know, I'll just pull out a lot of this stuff. So, all of the orc stuff is in a nice, like, dark green. Um,
Are they two identical screws like traditional Blood Bowl teams?
yes, yeah, so you have a large sprue here, which has the entire team. There's one. Here's the other one. We have, what is it? I think two sprues here for the troll,
Oh, okay.
and then two sprues here for the star player. I don't, something gore chewer, Varog, or ghoul chewer. So they're the two sprues for him. We have a blue sprue that this just has
That's okay.
the referees, an elf and a dwarf referee. And then for the human team,
Well, I
we
feel even stuff like adding the referees is another thing that, like, they wouldn't have had to do that, or even adding a controller, and adding those things makes it seem like there's attention to detail, which is nice.
yeah, so the human team, we have two sprues for them. And then their star player, Griff Oberwald, he only comes on a single sprue. And the same thing is true with the ogre, which, if you've been playing Blood Bowl for a while, you might already have an ogre and one of the trolls, but it's still nice they gave them to you.
Mhm.
Um, then we have a big sprue with the different templates.
Template.
Yeah, so
That
one
yeah, that's
for
like the previous one. In some sense, I kinda wonder. I mean, I guess it's because they made them already and might as well keep using them. But, like, the throw-in template and the scatter template, like, in
pretty weird.
Blitzball, have that printed on the board, and I kinda think that makes sense. in the sense that it's not like it really changes.
Yeah, well, they gave it to you again. It's fine.
It's nice. It's a nice design. It looks nice,
Cool.
and they're sturdy and well made. So it's good.
And so
And I think
this
maybe also the board is pretty big, and they didn't want to add extra space around it to put those templates, perhaps.
And so probably the biggest thing, which Games Workshop has been doing this for years now, is they have a card divider between all of the other components and the models themselves. And I don't know if you can get a good, you can sort of get a good view here. You can tell there are all these divots and indentations from the sprues themselves. So that kind of helps prevent the worst of damage from happening. And then on the reverse side, it's actually kind of neat here. There's a little pictorial diagram of all of the current
Point out the
plastic.
teams you have, Adam.
Okay, we have the halflings, we have the dwarves, I have 4 goblins, I don't have the snotlings, we have the dark elves, I don't have the undead, we have the lizard men. Sometime I'll get the necromantic horrors. We have the nobility team, we have the human team, we have the chaos team. No ogres. We have the Skaven, we have the wood elves, we have the high elves, we have the Nurgle, we have the orcs. So, oh my god. So wait.
Is the only thing you don't have the new necromantic team and the ogres? Oh, and the snotlings.
Yeah, so, oh my god. Guys,
That's
we...
a lot of
Oh, we
models.
don't have the undead. But I just was talking this
I
week
do.
about... Oh yeah, you do, actually.
Or I
Yeah.
guess they're actually. I assembled them for a friend, so we don't really have them. But
I was talking about getting some because I think you'd probably use some of their boots in conversions.
yeah, they're nice models. The ghoul is a cool model.
I actually think the ogre team, the ogres look pretty nice. It doesn't mean I'm gonna buy them, but they're fine. Okay, so then underneath that, we have a little bag of all the bases. There's still these kind of... Repeat that, Eric?
Decals.
Well, yeah, so I've watched a few unboxings in my time, and the one guy apparently in his box, he didn't get any decals, and he also didn't get any instructions to build any of the models. But so here we have all the bases. They just give you,
They did improve that.
yeah, these
They have this
standard,
one
the
of them.
slotted standard Blood Bowl bases. I don't even know why they give you these, because most of the models, and even yeah, these new teams, they don't have the slots on the legs. So you have to do something to fill this, whether it's gluing a piece of parchment paper over it or filling the bottle bottoms with modeling putty.
I almost feel like they just gave it to you like, oh, some people like that there's that hole to put the ball in, so we're just gonna keep giving it to people. But they're not great.
Okay, so then they give you the rule book, which, and this is shrink wrapped. And interestingly, so the shrink wrap rule book, they also have these in the back here, these nice little quick
Reference cards?
reference cards. One thing that I was a little upset with is if you buy the hardbound rulebook, which I did before Greg decided he'd buy the actual game. I wanted a physical copy of the rules. This comes shrink wrapped, but they don't give you those little quick reference sheets, which I was sort of hoping they would, but they
Yeah,
don't.
because I feel they're nice. Hey, Rage Gauge 04. We're just unboxing Blood Bowl, which is a Games Workshop game of fantasy football.
Okay, yeah, so the rules are nice. It's nice they actually gave you a hardbound version of the rule book.
I feel we talked about this a little bit before, but this version of the rulebook is so far superior to what they did when they re-released Blood Bowl in 2016. Like, this has all the teams in it, including, like, the new ones, like those necromantic horrors. It has all the special rules, all the league play rules, um,
Yeah.
all that stuff all in one place, whereas before, they didn't have, like, any of the team rules. They a lot of rules for, like, league stuff, throwing players, all this stuff was spread out between multiple little rule books that they released over time, and just very inconvenient, and it's nice that they corrected that.
Okay.
Raid Age, it's essentially, um, set in the Warhammer universe, like the old world, so, like, before Age of Sigmar, but most of the models, I think, if you wanted to, you could pretty easily use them in Age of Sigmar.
They just don't have Stormcast.
Yeah, it's
Okay, so
true.
our version of Blood Bowl did come with the instructions. Apparently not all of them did. Um Not
The
that the
big orc star player, I think, is great looking, like, he would be just a nice orc model for any sort of orc army, 40K or otherwise, and
Balrog Ghoul Chewer.
in some sense, because these models are, like, playing a sport, they aren't as overladen with dumb-looking weapons,
No, that's actually
and
kind
I
of
almost
nice.
think, like, it would be if you did wanna convert stuff, some of them have, like, open hands and things, and, I
Well,
think
I mean, I've
that's
already seen people making conversions with Varog Ghoul Chewer to make like orc war bosses and stuff like that. So I think that is going to be a common conversion. And particularly, I think eventually they'll release the model separately to buy, and I think a lot of people do that. So the
yeah.
instructions are fine. Well, I remember the last year in 2016 when Blood Bowl came out, a lot of people took the human team and used them to convert our BTs Enforcer models and stuff. And that was
Mm.
years before they released the Necromunda plastic versions of them. So I
Yeah, no,
think people will still find uses for some of these models for conversions and whatnot. But so the instructions, they exist. We have a little thing of decals. They're fine. Um, these little spiked football. See if we can zoom in on them. Spiked footballs are kind of neat.
yeah, and all the different numbers, like, I feel that stuff is certainly could be useful.
Yeah, if you don't want to freehand all the numbers. They actually give you 2 sets of dice, which is nice. A
Yeah, 'cause
clear
I think in
green and clear
the
red.
last they only gave you a single set of dice,
Damn.
so
These ones are pretty nice too. They're very... You can clearly actually read them. They have a nice bold white font, so that's good. Giving you dice for each team.
mhm,
Then we have the pitch and
the dugouts. What
yeah,
looks like I'm not 100% sure about this because 'cause it's been a while since I played the other version, but I think the dugouts were made smaller,
yeah. Apparently they're significantly smaller.
which is kinda nice just because the game, the board's pretty large and it already takes up enough space, like, you it's nice that it's a little bit
Well,
more
since
subdued.
Greg, since you pre-ordered the game, they sent us some winter themed dugouts, and they look to be the same size as the normal ones. Let's actually we
There
compare them.
was there ever a winter board released?
There
Like, they
was years ago there was a
oh,
winter itch, which I remember I had wanted to buy it, but with all of the pitches they release, they only have a very limited printing of them, and people have come to realize this So unless you're really quick about it, sometimes they can be hard to actually get.
Yeah.
But so look, there's a Christmas tree here. And some candy canes. It looks like they just reused most of the same assets as the normal ones. Here, it's just they added some candy canes and other stuff like that.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
and there's some snow. So they're not really much different, but it's still kind of a neat,
That's fun.
a nice gesture. And this skull here has a Santa hat. That's fine. We want to actually, I guess we may as well look at the pitch. Was in the 2016 version, was it also a double-sided pitch? Does anyone remember?
I do not remember.
Oh, I didn't. I don't think I ever actually saw the pitch because the copy of the game, at that point, I was the other side of the country, so I didn't see most of it. It probably was. That's something they've been doing for a while. Okay. Got that out okay. So here are the dugouts again. They look pretty nice. I'll say so like here's the casualty box. Here's people who've been like injured and knocked out. Here are like your reserve players. So none of these are very big. So I guess I'll actually have to play some games before I get a sense as to whether if the size of some of these things are large enough. I guess depending on what team you are, if like you're goblins or some of those other teams, you might have a lot of reserve players, or lots of your players might be getting killed. Because if we just look at the like halflings, gonna set some most of these models, you really only have room for about 3 or so, 2 to 3 models. I mean, that's probably fine in most cases. Hopefully you're not losing that many during the course of a game. In terms of the board, I don't actually know. Pretty big, actually. Oh boy. Oh my gosh. Well, getting a good... You actually need a pretty big area to put down the Blood Bowl pitch. God damn. That's huge. Overall, it looks pretty nice. The board itself is pretty well printed. High quality. Cardboard. The printing itself looks good. You can easily see most of the different squares. So based on what your movement is, you can move so many individual squares in the game. And you can see those squares pretty easily. It gets a little trickier in the center of the field with the Blood Bowl logo, but still easy enough to figure out, I think. The reverse side, it almost looks kind of more like a dungeon. And let's look at that. Damn, I didn't prepare for this. That looks nice too. This is, since each of the little floor tiles on the board represents one of the different movement spaces, it's even easier to see all of the different movement squares. So I think in terms of either side, this one might be a little easier to play on. But they both look nice. I would be interested, I'll have to go try and get a copy of the game from 2016. I think you could probably pretty easily get it sometime. I'll have to try and get it and see how much the boards and the pitches actually differ from that last version. Like, I don't know if they differ in size or anything like that. It's a pretty big board. Actually, let's look at a Blitzball player. So yeah, they essentially pretty much perfectly fit on one of the squares of the board. And so the only thing that's a little different, there are a few models, for instance, like the new Treeman model. It comes on a larger base. And even that larger base, if you set it in one of the squares, it fits pretty nicely. Some of the edges make it past the square a little bit, but it won't be confusing if you're actually playing and using some of the larger models in the game. Like, I don't know, the ogre and some of the trolls, like, I don't know if they didn't look like they gave you larger bases for them, so they must have designed them to fit on the smaller base. Yeah, so the pitch, it looks nice. We'll need a much bigger area to play on it. Like, if we'd ever want to show a game of Blood Bowl on stream, I'd have to rethink the layout a little bit. Actually fit this on. I think we could probably do it, but it'll take some work.
No one has time to watch that.
No, it's true. It is interesting looking at board. The board already has like scratches and stuff on it. That's nice. I guess that's okay. I don't want to get too attached to it. But yeah, so that looks nice. Let's put that back in. We'll put the dugouts, the instructions. Let's put it all back in the box. And the rule book as well. And then maybe we'll spend a little bit of time and look at some of the models. Okay. What do you want to see first, Greg? The orcs or the...
Yes, look.
Yeah, I feel I'm more interested in them.
I think they're better looking models.
It might be a little harder to get a good look at them because they're so dark. But
So, friends, I think I might go to bed. I need to get up.
that's fair. Well, thanks for being here with us, Greg. It was fun.
Yeah. Be well, everybody. Thanks
Yes.
for tuning in.
Okay, so
I
looking
feel
at...
this theme is interesting in the fact that it just has a lot of, like, it's just all black orcs.
Well, yeah,
They're
because
all
in
like
the older edition, or the 2016 edition, they had a black orc player, and there were a few positionals that
Mm-hmm.
were black orcs. And now in this newer edition, the orc team doesn't even have black orcs. They have biggins. And now the black orcs, they decided they wanted their own team.
Yeah.
So these ones look pretty nice. It is kind of interesting if we look at some of like the little jaw piece. Like you actually see in there, you see like the lower jaw with the tongue and the little bar that he's biting down on to have this like little front face mask. So that's nice detailing. The models themselves, I think they're in some pretty nice postures. They have really beefy, nice looking fingers. They're certainly heavily armored. I know some people were talking about how you might be able to take some of these models and convert like knobs and other stuff for like a Warhammer 40,000 orc army.
Yeah.
And I feel you could do that pretty easily.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see their size in relationship to other orcs, because I feel like the size of like the Age of Sigmar, whatever those models were, like the Age of Sigmar orcs, the Iron Jaws or whatever they're
Yeah.
called. I feel they were big in some sense, but their heads were smaller than even like 40k orc boys, because how the physiology changed slightly. I kind of wonder, yeah, how do these compare to
To me, it looks
that?
like their heads are smaller as well. They're at least similar. I think they're pretty
Okay.
similar to the Orc. Right.
Mhm.
The goblins look pretty nice too.
I don't think they look as good as just the regular Blood Bowl goblins,
They do
but
not, but
they're
some of
better
them
than
are
the
good.
big red.
Yeah. This little goblin here actually has a full um suit of like plate armor, at least on his chest, which is kind of cute. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
They look nice. I think certainly of all these new models, this orc team is the one I'm most excited about. I think the black orcs themselves look really nice. Their feet
Mhm.
are not oversized. They're posed
Amazing.
well, and they're large models. So I think I'll be interested if I assemble any of these models. It will certainly be the orc team,
Yeah.
but that also seems like kind of a stretch. We'll see. um,
Well, you need to do it because soon they'll have rules for Blitzball, which even that's interesting because if they do make rules for Blitzball, like it's essentially just two models, a like a little Grot and a Black Orc. So that's interesting.
no, that is actually true. There's not a whole lot. So yeah, they look nice. The troll, I don't know. There's not a whole lot to see here
I feel
with
the
the
Troll
troll.
is always a good model. I think it's a little busy though, like throwing like such that it's kind of hard to make sense of everything's happening and all that because it's
There's a lot going on. I
so
mean, isn't
dynamic.
it's the troll's knee pad is actually a human football helmet, which is kind of cute. And it is nice that they made the troll like one of the reasons people use these larger trolls and stuff in Blood Bowl teams is because they can throw teammates, the smaller teammates. And so this troll, he's doing this just that. He's throwing this little goblin. And so I think they did a good job of sort of capturing kind of that funny, weird, quirky nature of Blood Bowl directly in the model itself. So I think that's good.
Well, I think interestingly, now I think ogres can now throw halflings.
Oh,
Before, I
really?
think it was only men.
Is it
I think
throw or
ogre.
kick?
Oh, I don't
I
know.
know ogres. The ogre team, I think, can kick the Noblars. I think.
Okay.
I don't know. I didn't look very closely. All right, so let's look at Varog Ghoul Chewer. 2 sprues. Extremely heavily muscled, like the point where the muscles almost don't even make sense. But he's in a very action-oriented, like running pose. He has a ghoul on his shoulder pad. Like, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I will say one thing. This was one of the models, they had a Forge World sculpt of it, and that looked really bad compared to this one here. So I feel most people should be pretty excited. We have a cheaper plastic version of the model. It also looks a lot better. The model's face. It's interesting. You have the main part of the head here, which has like all of the ears, the lower jaw, and it's just the front of his face was cut out, and then you glue the front of his face on. An interesting way to do it, but I feel that you could pretty easily, if you were up for some converting work, like you could actually just trim out the face of an orc that you liked and replace that. His armor, like the Black Orc teams in general, is pretty simple and utilitarian looking. So I think that kind of goes a long way with if you did want to use this model for something else. You could do it pretty easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that looks good. If we look, here's the ogre. This was the ogre model that they released a few years ago. It's a nice ogre. I feel it's a pretty standard Games Workshop ogre. It's in kind of a running pose, and I feel they did an admirable job of making it look like it's running and not. They make it look like it could largely work. So yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
Then they have Griff Oberwald, I believe his name is. This is another model. They had a Forge World sculpt of it that it was okay. This newer plastic version, I think, is maybe a little stronger. It's a lot more over the top than the Forge World one, which I could see some people not really liking that. Like, he literally has an eagle carrying around some of his, like, medals. Which, that's something. Yeah, here you can
Because I think before
them.
the bird, they're not a model for that, or was it separate? Or I feel
Was the bird actually a thing in the game or something?
I kind of thought I heard maybe it was, or maybe it was just, like in the narrative or something.
Okay,
I'm not
well,
sure.
I don't think the Forge World model, I don't think had anything like that. But what's interesting, Griff Oberwald, he's a very good star player in the game, apparently. He like always has been, and he's like really fast and really great. You kind of question like, how could he be so fast? Like, look at the size of this fucking helmet he's wearing. It has this huge.
I kind of feel the model looks a little stunty almost. Like he looks stocky and short in a way.
Yeah, I mean, he's like really butch and bulky, which is kind of true with like all of these human players, and that kind of makes him, and his feet are also huge, and that in itself I kind of feel makes him doesn't necessarily look swift and agile, which, whoa, his actual face is just this tiny little cut out piece here.
Goes to that. Huh.
Yeah, so he's cut in an interesting way.
Yeah, he's cool. Like, well, I guess the main thing, like with the other, and sort of like the referee too. Like it was neat that they put the extra care to design them in plastic, and I feel oftentimes when they design models in plastic, they spend a little bit more time with it.
Yeah, so I like the referee models, like the little. Here's a little elf referee holding up like a red card. The elf looks great. Feet are small, well scaled, probably scaled better than most Games Workshop models. There's like a little dwarf blowing a whistle, and then he has what may be like a the book of rules or grudges or something that's on his back. It's kind of fun. He has this huge feather quill. It doesn't make that much sense, but it's there. Yeah, so they were a nice inclusion. I don't know if like do you actually use referees or anything in game terms, or are they just kind of to be on the side of the
Honest-
field to
I honestly don't know to
add
catch
to?
calls.
I feel
Yeah, I don't know.
adding like any of these little things to the side of your game, if you spend the time to like paint them and assemble them, will kind of just add to the whole atmosphere.
I think like if, you can get like apothecaries and cheerleaders and stuff like that, and well, often it's just like, oh, re-roll this, re-roll that. Like actually making them and having them, I think, would just be kind of fun and adds to the narrative and charm.
So this little elf referee is he's pretty small compared to like this dark elf blitzer.
Mm-hmm.
Which I mean,
Makes
maybe
sense
that's
for
good. I mean, this blitzer, he's the biggest, baddest
yeah.
of the dark elves. So I think that's fine. So they're cool, and then them releasing a new human team. This is interesting. The human nobility. I was not much of a fan of these models. I think overall they look okay. The thing I really don't like, one of their positionals is this really fat, obese dude who's like smoking a pipe. And I'm
Well,
not.
one thing is interesting about that because he's one of their special players or whatever, and so he's fat, and like you can tell who he is obviously for that. But
Mm-hmm.
the second player like that isn't fat, and they honestly look pretty much like all their other players.
Yeah, like
Maybe just
one's called like the
better.
bodyguard.
Oh yeah, so yeah.
So yeah, I think some of these players are a little trickier to figure out what they are. And I mean that was even true for like the human team.
Human Blitzer isn't
Like the
that.
if you compare this one is the blitzer and he has like this taller crest on his helmet. You compare that to like one of the standard like linemen. I mean,
They basically look the
they
same.
look about the same. The blitzer, you can tell they kind of tried to add a little more armor to him, like on his thighs and maybe ankles a little, but it's
It's
not
not
really
that.
enough to allow you to differentiate between them very well. So I feel like it's kind of just been a problem. Has always been a problem, and these they like they're a lot more over the top than the old human team. They have all these feathers and all this other shit, but they didn't make it really much easier to differentiate. And I mean, they have like a female like lineman or line woman. They're
Mm,
not a positional, right? Probably
no,
not.
I think so.
Because, and I mean, they're much smaller than the male counterparts, which, and that's sort of excited about that. Like their feet are so much smaller. Like that, I feel would be a
Yeah,
great,
yeah.
great conversion material. But you almost would have thought if they made the female model a positional, like they would be much easier to differentiate.
Hmm.
But I mean, these they look pretty nice. Like they're well sculpted. Um,
I mean, I feel they're better than the other human team in terms of
they're
like.
certainly posed better. The detailing is
Mhm.
better.
I mean, I don't love the design that much, but I mean, honestly, it fits very well with the Empire and like what you would anticipate the old world there, the Empire with a bunch of nobles and pretentious people. Like it fits. So,
Yeah.
and I feel Blood Bowl is kind of all about uh turning on the charm of some of those older races and armies and such, and just being kind of cheeky with things.
Yeah. So overall, I would say if you're at all interested in Blood Bowl, this is certainly the definitive version of it. And
I mean, I feel the previous version was still like $100 or 110, so this is maybe 140, which is a lot, but I feel they actually did give you a lot more. It's a better product than it had been, and
the
it's
teams
not.
themselves are actually like new, nice teams. They're not like kind of the snap fit together teams of the old edition. And
Well, that's true too. Like, what if they just like put in the same models as like the older orc and human team? Not that they're terrible or anything, but like anyone who's been playing the game before or playing Blitzball or anything like that, they all have those models, and
I
people
feel
would still
you.
be inclined to buy the game and just uh,
I
for
feel it
no
was a
reason.
good idea to just introduce two new teams for the
Yeah.
game. It adds a little more variety and interest to the game.
It does, and yeah, I think it's nice to showing that like, hey, we can actually add new teams to this game rather than just. I mean, I guess they added that Nurgle team and stuff, but I in the that ogre one. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, more content is nice, particularly for a game that's kind of so well play tested and been around for so long.
Well, I guess
I could.
one other thing that I should say, I'm looking at some of these models here, and the mold lines on the models are pretty significant. Yeah, so I almost feel like Games Workshop more recently, they've gotten worse in their production
Mm,
of plastic
mm,
sprues. Like, for a while, I thought they sometimes were pretty good with. I mean, they always have mold lines, but sometimes they're pretty fine and they're easy to remove. Most of these models, the mold lines themselves are pretty noticeable, and if you just snapped them to cut them out and glued them together, they're not gonna look good. Um, in, from my case, these aren't bad enough that I'm really upset. Like, if anything, they're easier to identify to remove, but
yeah.
they're not great. Like recently, I saw Raw Bear did an unboxing and a review of the new
Yeah.
Primaris
Uh,
um close
Intercessor
combat
assault one.
models, and oh my
Yeah.
god, they had some of the worst mold lines I've seen, maybe even ever. The only thing that I
Sure.
could say rivaled that, where I got a box of Gene Stealer Cultists 2 or 3 years ago, and they were terrible. Um, they were so bad, and these ones Rob was showing were so bad. I think if you were new to the game and didn't really know about mold lines, if you snipped them together and glued them together, you would realize they needed to be removed if you were just new to the hobby. They looked that bad.
Like, God forbid you'd try to prime them.
Yeah. Um
Yeah.
So that isn't great. Like, I feel Games Workshop at this point should be a little better at it. If you look at some of the, say, the model kits that Bandai's putting out with the different Gundam models, they've gotten, I feel, a lot better in both placement of the seam lines, and if there is a seam line, it is really minimal to the point where you might not even notice it, or you could consider it an additional like panel line or some additional detailing. Whereas with Games Workshop models, it's never like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not really much of an issue. But it is interesting to see different companies how they sort of like what they value and what they try and minimize.
Yeah.
And here, I think they could do a little better than what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's the unboxing of Blood Bowl. Hopefully, if people found it interesting, you learned something from it. I know I did.
Well, if you were to assemble or do anything with it, like, what would you do, Adam?
Oh, I would trim and assemble some of the orcs. Mainly because
Yeah.
I'm most interested in kind of getting a better look at them and seeing how they.
Kind of be nice to see like size comparisons to just like, a Primaris, like those Primaris Space Marine conversions you made, or just various models, in hoping to see like, is this sort of like the new definitive scale of like a larger knob like model.
Yeah.
I guess Specialist Games has a tendency to make models a little larger, so who knows.
So there you can see those mold lines.
Oh yeah,
Like they're very apparent.
that is apparent. It'll be interesting if, like, presumably it's still the same plastic, just a dye in it, but sometimes the plastic like, behaves slightly differently in how you remove the mold lines and such. Hopefully, this doesn't make that harder.
You can also clearly really see it on the coin.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
they're
you can.
pretty intense.
Well, at least it's not on their fingers. Ha ha ha.
Oh my god. Yeah, so they're bad. They're bad, everybody. The mold lines on new Games Workshop products are bad. They've not learned. I would say they're probably getting worse. I wonder if that. I wonder why that is. Huh.
I don't know.
We're not going to get an answer to that, but I guess it'd be
Yeah.
interesting to see other people who are assembling newer sculpts and models if you've had a similar experience, but
Yeah.
these aren't great.
Yeah.
Actually, let's look. One of these, like Griff Oberwald, what does he look like? Oh, well, see, that's interesting. The mold lines on Griff Oberwald are good. They're very minimal.
I could see it's just maybe
The
a
mold
run
lines
of
on the Ogre are terrible. And you could argue that that is because maybe they've been using the mold for that for a long time. They've gotten shittier
Yeah, I
over
don't know how
time.
that you would think they, because I feel for that stuff, they're like metal molds, right? They're
Yeah,
not
they
like silicone.
are. The
You would
mold
think
line
they
on the trolls, it's bad. It's not good.
is the ability team bad too?
I'm gonna look at that soon. Varog, Ghoul Chewer, he's good. He's fine. Mold lines on
Mm.
Varog are fine. But actually, let's look at both screws. No, he's good. So the character models, those are good. The The referees are bad. They're bad. Alright, so let's look at the Imperial Nobility. Are they bad too? The Imperial Nobility are good. They're actually good.
Well, that's interesting.
Yes, okay, so the Imperial Nobility are good.
Are both sprues of the orcs bad? Like,
they're both pretty bad. Yes. So about half of the sprues in the box have verging on unacceptable mold lines for at least what I would consider GW standards. They're never great, but these I feel are worse than normal. I don't think they're worse than if you watched Rob Bear's Primaris Intercessor Close Combat Dude review. They're not worse than what we saw there. I mean, if you have watched that video, he even comments how they're terrible. So, like, they're really bad. Yeah, so I don't know. It's interesting. Doesn't affect us too much because I labor to remove all the mold lines regardless.
yeah,
but it is
even if they're good, in some sense, it's slightly harder because, like, I want to get them all off, so I'm gonna scrape at where a mold line should be, even if it's hard to see one.
Yeah.
So.
Oh Jesus, that's kind of a shame. So it looks like, this one goblin we got, his fingers were broken off.
Are they gone then?
Yeah, I think they're gone. Guess maybe that's something I should. Let's look at it, everybody. Fuck.
Yeah, that's see, and that's why, like, they've certainly gotten better, but it was still just a bunch of sprues thrown in there. Like, they weren't like shrink wrapped in a way or something to prevent them from sliding around.
There you can see, like, his fingers here. They're gone.
They're gone. They are so gone.
Yeah. That doesn't do you much to get excited now, does it?
No.
Yeah, so that's even that's probably the coolest of the goblins. It's the one with a weird little helmet.
Yeah.
Well, I'll look around a little and see if I can find the fingers, but they're probably gone. So that's a little unfortunate, but yeah. So that would be interesting. I wonder if I contact Games Workshop and show pictures and tell them. I wonder if that's something they would replace.
I think they probably would. I mean, they certainly used to do stuff like that, and they were pretty good about it.
Yeah.
I suspect they still would be. Well, maybe they would replace the sprue, and you'd get one that doesn't have mold lines.
Horrible mold lines. I kind of doubt it, but maybe. So maybe we'll see. I might send them an email sometime this week, and maybe I'll report back to everyone if that resulted in anything.
Have to do that.
Yeah. So, yeah. I don't know. I think that that kind of finishes what I was planning for the day.
Yeah.
Maybe we just wanna
wrap
call
it
the
up.
stream to a close. We've been going on for a while now.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us and commenting about stuff. Hopefully you learned something and had fun. Everyone stay safe. Stay healthy. Keep on enjoying the hobby, and I guess until next time, we'll talk to you
Yeah,
again soon. Over and out.
see ya.